Give us a break. Don't try what you're about to see at home.
In this wall-shaking episode of Mythbusters,
That's the sound!
we're taking combustion and propulsion to their unnatural limits.
Oh!
Can a well-aimed, high-pressure air tank really be a lethal missile? Could 2 compressed air cylinders power the world's fastest speedboat?
Remember, Jamie, experiments like this are 90% mental.
And can an engine fueled by gunpowder do anything but blow itself to pieces? It's fast, it's furious,
It was the lard that did it.
and it's firing on all cylinders. Who are the Mythbusters? Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
This is gonna kill you.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience.
That's what I'm talking about!
Joining them, Tori Belleci,
Very excited about this.
Carrie Byron,
Look, he cracked into his skull.
and Grant Imahara.
Don't say anything.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test. As Adam loves to demonstrate, there's all sorts of interesting ways to injure yourself on the job. It seems danger is everywhere, but nothing on the workshop floor has quite the deadly potential of a compressed gas cylinder. Accidentally snap the valve, and any tank instantly transforms into a massive rocket with no flight plan. Now, that's a fact, but what's the myth?
Well, we touched upon it a little during Shark Week, but I don't think we finished it.
Oh, I remember that thing.
Yeah, compressed air cylinders, and there are no end to the stories that people tell about the kind of damage that they can do.
Well, this one just made a really big boom, but you're talking about where they take off like a rocket and go through a concrete wall, right?
Exactly, and that is precisely the myth that we'll be testing.
Adam and Jamie have some experience to draw on. Back in their Jaws special, they blew a scuba tank with a wad of C4 explosive. Then shot another tank with a high-powered rifle. It didn't blow up, but it sure went off. And if a cylinder rocket can bend solid steel, what's it going to do to a concrete wall?
As far as I'm concerned, there really is only one way to test this thing.
Well, yeah, we have to fire it at a cinder block wall.
So we're going to need a selection of air cylinders and some regulators on them. We're going to need a cinder block wall to fire them into, and some kind of method for catastrophically taking that regulator right off.
And also, we have to figure out how to make sure it actually hits the wall. I mean, what if this thing just kind of goes like that?
I think I want to be outside the building that we're testing this inside of.
Yeah.
To test the myth, they'll need to aim the cylinder like a missile, devise some way to sever the valve in a split second, and build a wall to aim at. They'll have to start work on the wall first, so Jamie's assistants, Terry and Tyler, get commissioned as Mythbuster Masons.
So I'm going to set you up, and it's going to be in your hands to make sure it all happens. So don't screw up. I'll kick your butt.
Walls are useful for all sorts of things, like holding up the roof. So punching a high-speed hole through a supporting wall might not be such a good idea. This freestanding barricade won't be pretty, but it will be, well, great. Meantime, Adam is checking the myth with a man whose whole working life has been spent under extreme pressure. George Ratterman supplies valves and cylinders across the USA, and like most of us, he's heard all of those explosive stories secondhand.
The first thing we've heard is that if you knock off the valve to a cylinder, they can fly right through a brick wall.
Yeah, you know, that is the myth. I've heard that from a number of people. In most cases, you ask them a few more questions, you find out they actually weren't there. I think somebody else told them. And most of the time what the story is, it would take off and it would usually go through a cinder block wall, disappear, go out in the field, or else possibly be found, through a couple more fences or something.
We want to build this rig that shears the valve right off of this. And for the first test rig is a large weight in a guided tube that comes down right on top of the cylinder and knocks it right off. I mean, do you think that's going to work?
I don't know if that's going to work. I would be concerned that you're going to end up with an uneven brake and or only a partial brake. And that's when you're really going to get a spinning effect of the vessel.
And remember, we're talking an ankle-smashing 140-pound steel cylinder. Even a partial shear could send this thing ballistic. It might also start spinning erratically, which Jamie calls rat chasing. To ensure that doesn't happen, the tank needs a long, sturdy guide rail to guarantee it takes off in a straight line.
I've got to build a rig that does a couple of different things. The first thing is that it has to hold this tank steady in such a place that we can drop a heavy weight on the valve and knock it off. The second thing is that same holder is going to guide it as it takes off so that once it gets going, it's aimed in a certain direction and it'll hit the wall at speed, we hope. Good. It looks like it fits fine.
To sever the valve, he's fitting a hinged 10-foot tube to drop a 40-pound steel bar bang on the nozzle. Adams borrowed some tea-sized tanks from George, so all they need now is a good, solid target.
I think we got everything.
All right, well, let's get out there and try and blow one of these cylinders through the wall.
This military bunker is the perfect place to test what we all hope will be the world's first and most destructive land torpedo. Oh. Seems Terry and Tyler did a first-rate job.
It works for me. I think this will do just fine.
Yeah, that seems nice and solid.
It's not quite as big as the side of a barn, but the question remains, can the cylinder actually hit it?
So I'm thinking that when we set up the rig over by the door, we want to make sure those doors are as close as we can get them.
Okay, well, they are, in theory, rockets, so we should be careful with them.
To help the rocket on its way, Myth Jess gets to grips with the lard. Trust Jamie to always have a bucket or two on hand. It's cheap, it's smelly, and it's a great way to reduce friction.
It's important to be judicious about your lard distribution, Jess.
The rig is greased and ready, but will the steel bar have enough momentum to break the nozzle?
This is a 2 by 2 inch solid steel bar, and it weighs, I think, officially a heck of a lot.
That's 40 pounds dropped from a height of 10 feet. It's a classic case of a square peg in a round hole, and that surely deserves a test run.
Piece of a brick right there.
All right.
That'll keep the end of our piece of steel from getting too damaged.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, yeah. That looks pretty serious.
If a 40-pound bar can do this, just imagine what a 140-pound gas tank could do. If all goes to plan, it's looking curtains for our wall.
Shooting the scuba tank with a 30-06, that was awesome. And I have never felt like we were totally done with that until 10 minutes from now.
Coming up, Cary, Grant, and Tori put gasoline and gunpowder to the test in a giant homemade cylinder. And the boys get ready to bring the house down.
Shearing the compressed air cylinder in 3, 2, 1.
Now, here's a motor myth that's way overdue for testing. In fact, it's a classic blast from the past. Most modern engines run on gasoline, but it wasn't always the fuel of choice. Some mechanical pioneers favored a more explosive kind of combustion.
Trying to test the claim that you can run an engine using only gunpowder.
Sounds easy enough. Get an engine, add black powder, ignite.
Hang on a minute. There have been a lot of people that have tried this through the ages. Maybe we should try a few of their experiments just to see if we can learn from their mistakes.
Finally, we get to learn from somebody else's mistakes.
Now, common sense tells us the words engine and gunpowder shouldn't even be used in the same sentence. But the respected men of science who designed our 3 test engines clearly thought otherwise. And Tori's not going to learn from anyone's mistakes, because as far as we know, not one of these engines was ever actually built. The gunpowder fuel they plan to use is often called black powder. It's a volatile mix of sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal. But before the team even thinks about putting this lethal compound in an engine, it's worth finding out if it really has the kick needed to push a piston.
Well, we think there could be some really good reasons why you'd want to use black powder in an engine. To demonstrate that, we're going to do a comparison between black powder and gasoline.
For this first experiment, they custom build a supersized piston to test the comparative grunt of gasoline and gunpowder. To check that the seal works, they need an air pressure test. And Carrie can't resist going along for the ride. Well, the piston works. Operations move out to the car park and into the blast chamber. That's an indication of how much faith they have in the black powder.
Black powder comes with its own oxidizer, so unlike gasoline, which you need to inject a certain amount of air to get it to combust, black powder is ready to go all the time.
Finding which fuel produces more energy is easy enough to measure. A magnet sitting on top of the piston should stick to this metal scale, just where the piston hits the top of its stroke. First, the gasoline.